We're here today with Carissa Jordan and Nikki Boulukos.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear your story. The work you're doing now is really interesting, especially for young parents. You guys are both working at Goldman. You get to meet one another there. Became friends there, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
And then decided, well, maybe we ought to do this family thing too.
So there was a few steps between you. I think I left Goldman before you, maybe.
Yeah.
13. I went to do my first startup and moved to San Francisco. Did that for 2 years and then came back to New York. Got married, moved to the suburbs, and that's where we met, reconnected. We met when we had young children.
Yeah,
Playing together.
Carissa, you spent
Goldman.
how many years at Goldman?
I was there for 5 years, and then I left Goldman. I went to JP Morgan Private Bank.
Out here on the island?
Out here on Long Island, yeah. And while I was there,
Pace a little different?
pace was very different. It was night and day.
Yeah.
And I think
Particularly from the credit trading.
particularly from the credit trading floor, with dealing with very, what at Goldman, I was on the institutional side, right? So all of our clients were hedge funds, money managers, very sophisticated investors. And when I went over to JP Morgan, I was working with ultra high net worth and high net worth individuals. So people who've made, tens of millions of dollars, who were very wealthy, very successful in their fields. Many of them were not super market sophisticated. So I had to learn to speak a little bit differently, right? And some of that experience actually lends itself nicely to Benjamin Talks, right? So being able to water down complex topics in a way that's easy to digest by somebody who doesn't have that background in finance. But while I was at JP Morgan, I became pregnant with my first. And just for a couple of family reasons, and just given the pace was a little bit different, I left after I had him. Fast forward, some years later, Nikki and I reconnect over a play date with our children.
Oh, yeah.
And we started talking about, what are next steps? Like, what are we going to do? What are you passionate about? What am I passionate about? We started talking about financial literacy. We're like, well, how do you talk to your kids about money? And it kind of brought us down this rabbit hole. And we started doing this research, and we realized that there's no real blueprint out there for parents to use to talk to their young children about all things money. And we started having these conversations in mid-2019. So the world was quite different. Mm-hmm. And things have changed since then. But in 2019, people were not focused on financial literacy, especially at the age that we were targeting, which is really parents with children ages 3 to 10.
Uh-huh.
We find that to be the sweet spot. And the data suggests that that is a sweet spot for a couple of reasons. So children as young as the age of 3 understand value, right? So they understand that teddy bear is my teddy bear and I'm not going to give it to you, right? Yeah. So they have this understanding of intrinsic value, possession, value. They understand, they can start to understand delayed gratification and what that means. By the age of 7, the data suggests that children develop a relationship with money. And much of that is predicated by what is modeled to them in their households. And yet, majority of parents are uncomfortable having money conversations with their kids. So really that told us hey, there's this great white space that we could hopefully affect change. And with that in mind, we launched Benjamin Talks. We were originally going to launch in April of 2020, but we all know what happened.
No, what happened?
Nothing, right? So we actually pushed it down a little bit further. We launched in November of 2020.
Part of the reason we were so passionate about it, and almost in a sense frustrated about it, is that no matter what background you come from or what you're learning or not learning, I should say, in school, we felt like the basics of money, as much as balancing a checkbook, which is sometimes taught in a home ec class later down the line, we felt like it wasn't being introduced soon enough. There was no blueprint for an early age. So I think originally when we started discussing Benjamin Talks, we thought, we're going to get all this legislation passed and we're going to get into the schools and all of these things. And obviously there's been progress there. Hopefully more. We just went to a conference last week that's suggesting a lot more states are going to start continuing to follow the trend of mandating certain personal economic courses in the classroom. Again, this is all kind of at a later stage. And what we found in a lot of our research, well, one, we couldn't start with trying to go to the schools because that was going to be a huge uphill climb. And we would still love to get there eventually. But 2, that if it wasn't being discussed in the home, or you weren't kind of reiterating a lot of these concepts and principles that it wasn't going to be a sticky topic. So that's kind of why we decided to launch with what we eventually launched with, which was content for the parents and prompts and games and certain things to interact with your kids, as well as our product, which is the Benji Bank. We can get into a bit more about that, but basically we feel like the Benji Bank is the tool to kind of engage with your kids
Stimulate conversation.
Yeah, stimulate conversation and really work on these concepts and kind of bringing back to having these conversations early enough.
So tell us, who had the idea for the Benji Bank? What is it? How do you use it at home?
So I think the idea came up pretty organically. Again, we always knew we wanted to have content, but we're like, well, we need something that parents can use to implement that content.
It's hands-on.
It's hands-on. Like, well, what's out there? Oh, there's the cash register. There's the piggy bank. Oh, there's the piggy bank. But how is a piggy bank a teachable tool, right? It just kind of is. You can't see inside of it. The money goes in. It's really difficult to get out. You can't separate it. It's really used as more of a decorative piece or really to just sock money away for one day you to come back to. And we're like, well, that's not a
But it's
teachable
a kind of
tool.
remote an idea. I'm putting it in there for some reason,
But not exactly.
not a lot of talk about when it comes out,
Right.
how it comes out, what it
Exactly.
comes out for.
Exactly.
So we're like, well, how can we reinvent the piggy bank in a way that is actually an engaging tool for kids and for parents? And with that in mind, we're like, okay, well, clear. It needs to be clear. It needs to be siloed. It needs to be, the kids need to be able to access their money easily, be able to take their money in and out. The kids need to watch their money actually grow.
Mhm.
And those are all the ideas we came up with that came together in the Benji Bank.
And through conversation of what are the important types of dollars or spending, what types of things do kids need to think about? Well, you have your spending dollars, which are your everyday, oh, you want an extra ice cream or you want something out of a vending machine after practice. Those are spending dollars. That's very immediate. There's obviously your saving dollars for longer term goals, whether that be a bigger item, a scooter, a lava lamp, something like that. Something
Your
you're
kids don't want
towards.
lava lamps.
Something you're working towards. I think I'm gonna bring the lava lamp back.
Actually, my daughter.
We were at an arcade recently,
Yeah.
and she was very upset because she did not have enough tickets for the lava lamp. And she's 8, and she wanted that lava lamp.
They're
So
so
she,
cool.
so she basically begged her brother to play more games and give her their tickets.
That's so funny.
For a lava lamp.
So you have a lava lamp?
We have a lava lamp. We do.
So good.
So if somebody were to go to benjamintalks.com,
Exactly.
benjamintalks.com, they could buy a Benji Bank. What's going to come with it that'll help them to understand how to use this tool at home?
So the idea is that they sign up for our free content when they purchase the bank, and that when you sign up for our content, you kind of get a starter guide. These are the key topics to dive into, and then after that, we send out monthly newsletters on various topics. So we recently did one on how to set up a 529 kit plan for your child.
Mhm.
So you get that each month. So the free content is then used to help engage with the bench bank.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just say on the giving a silo, when this relates to kind of back to our corporate mission, we were like, how can we tell our kids to give without not doing so ourselves? So actually, when you buy a Benji Bank, $5 goes directly to our nonprofit partner Dream, which works on financial literacy, investing, different money topics with underrepresented urban youth in the Northeast. So that was a big part of, I feel like, when we founded Benjamin Talks and launched, that was a big part of our mission.
A parent who buys a Benji Bank, what age do you recommend they start chatting with their kids about money?
We found that particularly for the Benji Bank and engaging with the Benji Bank, 5. Although we have it's very popular baby gift as well. And people kind of add to it. So you can, in the save, you could do a check. They can put a little check in. They can have their savings account separately, things like that.
Well, there's savings bond.
Yeah, savings bond.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I will just add to that as while 5 seems to be the sweet spot for most children, in larger families, the younger kiddos want to be involved sooner. So we have found success with our younger kids at slightly younger ages, whether it's 3.5 or 4. While they may not fully grasp it, they want to participate in the act.
Your oldest is 10?
He will be 10. He'll be 10.
And so he's been involved with this for a while.
He's been involved from the start. All 3 of them
Yeah.
have been although the baby was.
Petra was born, my youngest was born March 13th, 2020. So
I would say our kids have been really involved though from the get-go, that it actually was a very pleasant surprise for us how interested they were in not only the content that we were working on, but the idea of, you know, mommy's building this business. Like, what does this mean? So they wanted to be involved in, you know, packaging the Benji Bank and talking about the Benji Bank.
Right?
And it's great
Definitely.
conversation. So I think
we
that
bring them to the warehouse. They help us check off we try to involve them as much as possible.
And they're learning a lot more
And they're
than
learning,
the
yeah.
direct interaction.
Right.
They're hearing things.
Yeah, and then,
they don't even think they're hearing.
Exactly.
with certain concepts, we're like, well, what age is this really good for? We'll kind of test it out on our kids and say, okay, the 5-year-olds are not really getting it, but, you know, the 8-year-olds are. So maybe that's the sweet spot. And it's been really great from that perspective. Super rewarding. I love that we could have our kids involved. I mean, my son obviously gravitates a little bit more. He's older, he's almost 10, right? So he gravitates a little bit more towards like the investing, which, again, we suggest starting those conversations.
And do you have them in a portfolio of bonds, different kind of yields?
He wants to own Tesla. He's like, how about Tesla and Disney? I'm like, okay.
Whereas my daughter, actually, I was telling Nikki today, kind of out of the blue, she started asking me about different career paths and what kind of money can be made and what, you know, how you can start thinking about that.
And she's 8.
And she's 8. Yeah, they're having career dress like your favorite career next week. And I think that kind of prompted
And what's she thinking
conversation.
addressing us?
So she's really torn between a dance teacher and a veterinarian.
Well, she could be the dancing veterinarian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we started talking about that. And also, you know, I think what's important is for parents to take it then like a next step further. So, you know, I was like, well, when you're thinking about career paths, you have to think about like, what kind of education do I need? What kind of experience do I need for that? And how does that play a role into my earning potential, but also the costs I need to commit before I even have this job, right? And then, you know, something else, because she's, you know, I hate that we had to do this, but because she's a girl, I said, you know, most dance teachers, their work hours are from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. And how does that play into, you know, your long-term goals?
Consequences.
Yeah.
Challenges. And was your experience with your kids?
Well, my little one, obviously, that was she's been more interested lately. And I was joking with Carissa, she's the youngest of my 3, but she uses her Benji Bank for coins now. She loves the coins, but also still jewelry. So she's participating, but not quite there yet. My 6-year-old is very interested, and that we actually recently, she had a birthday and she got some birthday money, and she was watching something on Poshmark, which is a site that you can repurchase. She really wanted this jacket, ridiculously priced jacket for a 6-year-old. I was like, well, you can watch it on one of the resale sites. Let's see, you know, if you can get it. She was watching, and then finally had enough and put a bid on it, and it got accepted. So that was a really fun activity with her.
So let's go down to, you have 3 boxes in the Benji box, and they are?
Spending, saving, and giving.
Okay, so how do you talk to the kids about the difference in the 3?
So when you think about the spend dollars, and again, we're talking to children ages, you know, that are actually using this cash, 5 to 10.
Yeah.
So your spending dollars are the dollars that you could use every day. So sometimes, you know, a big pain point for many parents is the vending machine. We always tell parents, instead of fibbing and saying, I left my wallet in the car, you say that's not part of the plan today. Let's make it part of the plan next week. Why don't you bring some of your spend dollars to use on the vending machine, right? And that's whether or not you have the cash or not for them to use. The idea is giving them the opportunity to use those spend dollars.
Sure.
So your spend dollars are used for everyday small purchases. Your saved dollars, and again, we're talking about children ages 5 to 10. And while we would love children to be saving for college or their first car, that's not a realistic goal for a 5-year-old. They can't understand that amount of time. So we have to think about what is an appropriate amount of time for them to wait for something. So at 5, that may be 2 months worth of allowance.
Wow.
Right?
Seems like a long time.
For a 5-year-old.
Percentage of life.
Yeah, it's a long time.
And then we build up that stamina as they get older. So it may be a pair of roller skates for a 5-year-old. It may be tickets to a sporting event for a 10-year-old. right? And then we think about our gift dollars. Nikki, you do this a lot from the get-go with your kids. You want to talk about?
Yeah, so I think particularly this age, there's a lot of opportunities to involve them in giving with the schools. So whether it's a food drive, a clothing drive, a diaper drive, we really like to use the give dollars for those moments. So instead of, I know, and we're all rushed as parents, we're all overextended, but instead of just sending in, shoving in the folder or buying the canned food for that, putting it in the backpack, you take those giving dollars that are in their veggie bank, you take them to the store, you pick out the list of canned foods, you have them pay at the register. I mean, do the transaction. They have to handle the physical cash to help understand the value. And how rewarding that is for them. We call it the giving blow. Yeah. It really involves them in the process, and they're proud. They're proudly marching in with the canned goods that they bought, rather than, oh, what are these in my backpack that my mom shoved in and put in the bin? They're really understanding the whole concept of.
And how do you talk to them about the fact that there's the 3 silos: spend, give, and save? How do you talk to them about percentages, how they should be thinking about when it goes where?
We like to think of it in the terms of, we'd rather have our children make small money mistakes at 5 and 8 and 10 than larger money mistakes at 18 and 20 and 25. Yeah. So while each family is different, and we oftentimes say, like, your family's yours, you do you. For our families, we don't really set hard and fast guidelines. We want our kids to kind of make those mistakes themselves first. So what does that mean, right? So if you have a kid who takes all their money and puts it in their...
And where's their money coming from?
Allowance.
Okay. And is that...
Or birthdays, there's obviously gifts.
Grandparents.
Teeth.
Teeth.
And how do you start the conversation around charity, saving, giving?
So there's a few ways. Obviously, there's those interactive moments that are prompted by the school, of course.
The canned food drive.
Yep, the canned food drive.
What is that about? Why do we do this?
And then there's another way that we like to engage the kids in terms of philanthropy and giving is really, when they're this young, is follow their lead. What are their hobbies? What are they passionate about? I love the story of Kellen. I mean, that's my favorite story about, the philanthropy with the pandas. And National Panda Day on his birthday.
So Kellen, a few years back, he was less interested in soccer and really interested in animals. And we bought him this book, and it was about all endangered animals. And in the back of the book, it listed all the endangered animals and said, which is their national day. And it turned out that Panda Day fell on Kellen's birthday, which was March 16th. So for a few years, he used some of his give dollars around his birthday to donate to the pandas. And while that may not have been my charity of choice for him, it still came from him wanting to give to a cause. And as parents, we need to lean into that, because as Nikki mentioned earlier, that gives kids the giving glow. So we really like to hone in on what they're passionate about.
Right. Give passions, give local. And obviously, then there's the other prompts from school or different organizations that you may be involved in as a family. Or, going back to family values, for some families that might be giving to the church, or different things in their culture. So I think that also plays into it.
So if they're going to go to church with you, you encourage them. If you want to put something in that basket, go to your give box, and what's it? Oh, there's nothing in there. What do?
Exactly. You have to learn how to change your behavior going forward. I mean, my children are definitely guilty of not having enough in one silo and trying to grab out of another. I go, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You made that decision already. You can't do that.
Well, then I'll take it out of my sisters.
Yeah. No, but what it can do is, let's say that they want to speed up filling that silo. In addition to allowance.
What can I do to earn money?
Exactly.
Then it comes.
So what we like to suggest parents do is look around your house, and anything that you would pay somebody else to help you do, use that as an opportunity for your child to earn some extra money. So if you have an older child, and let's say you have a Zoom call to do in the basement, maybe that older child is going to spend the hour babysitting their other 2 siblings, and they can earn for that. Or let's say you want to plant a garden, and it's just really time consuming. Maybe you suggest your child pitching in, and they get paid for that. So we call those extra jobs. And again, that helps build their earning muscles and their desire to earn.
I can see how it stimulates a whole lot of really interesting conversations. Talk to me more about allowances.
Well, every household is different. I think the biggest part and something that is very core to our belief in terms of what allowance should be is an allowance in our house is a way to learn how to manage money. It's not you're going to do X chores and receive Y amount. It's you're receiving an allowance as a tool to learn how to use money. Just like you can't learn how to play soccer without a soccer ball, you can't learn how to manage money without actually handling money. That said, you receive an allowance by being generally a good teammate in the household. What does that mean? It means whatever your jobs are assigned and helpful tasks around the house. So in my house, that's bringing your plate up, clearing it, putting it in the dishwasher. My older son makes his bed. My 6-year-old's getting there. It can mean different things. And again, generally a good teammate, because what happens with chores, just like adults, we don't always get every load of laundry folded and put away. Kids are busy. They have other things going on. We're not going to always, it's not going to be so strict with these chore lists. And that's why we find at a certain point it doesn't work. Or kids get to a certain point where like, the $3 of allowance doesn't really do it for me. I'd rather sit here and play Fortnite or whatever that conversation looks like in your home. What's most important about allowance is that it's divisible and in terms of what we believe. So you can split it into your spend, save, give. Again, let them make those mistakes, but encourage them to do so. We go by age and divide it by half. So my 6-year-old gets $3, my 8-year-old gets $4. As long as it's divisible, that's what is important, and that they're generally a good teammate. That's kind of our thought.
Divisible into 3 categories.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. But right away, there's always got to be some giving.
Yes. Well, we encourage
it. And again, if they then, how are they going to feel if they don't put any money in their give and they're asked to bring in canned goods for a food drive and they don't have money to spend on those canned goods? While it may really hurt the parent to not have them bringing those canned goods, it's a teachable lesson and they should understand what that feels like.
And you'd rather learn on this scale than, I don't have enough in my save to pay for my credit card later on, right? Like these are many money mistakes.
You emphasize how important it is that it includes currency, coins, and you mentioned that your daughter's fascinated by coins, and that you give a Susan B. Anthony, I assume, dollar coin. The world's increasingly getting cashless.
Yeah.
How do you guys think about the impact that has on young parents and their kids?
I had that direct conversation with my almost 10-year-old last month or 2 months ago, and he said, I really think it's time for me to get a debit card. And I said,
whoa.
I go, let's talk about this. And we spoke about it.
Does he have a phone yet?
No, I have a very strict policy.
Okay, your kid's asking you for a debit card, which knocks me over.
Yeah.
And I said, but I need a Venmo account, Mom.
So I think, Venmo is not, he's not even thinking about Venmo, but I think when we think about debit cards, we've always had this thought that the world is going digital. Sure. To say that our kids are only going to use cash forever, it's naive. It's not true, right? It's what we do at Benjamin Talks is prepare kids so that they're ready for a debit card. That they
if they go right to debit, it's like there's a reason why there's no cash in a casino.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There's a reason why you play with these funny, colored, beautiful, fun to play with chips.
They have to know what it feels like for them when they spend money, so that money to actually disappear. It's not
why that doesn't exist to them.
It doesn't exist. So we believe that children will eventually get debit cards, right? But you need to know that they're ready for debit cards.
Have they been receiving?
This is part of the education.
This is part of the education. Have they been receiving a cash allowance?
Are they comfortable budgeting? Are they mindful spenders? What are they going to use their money for?
Have they felt the pain of not having?
Exactly. So
because when you have a card,
you don't
if
feel
it's
that
a
pain.
charge card, you could slip into avoiding pain.
So they don't, for the kids, they don't really have access to the credit component, but it would be that debit card. And again, it's like that digital, virtual kind of
There's always that one family.
Always. Always. So while I do think it's child specific, if your child has a solid foundation of what is money, what are my spend dollars, what are my save dollars, what are my give dollars, have I budgeted, have I learned delayed gratification, am I a mindful spender, then maybe they are ready for a debit card. And I think debit cards now, and this is actually good, and this is a positive momentum from when we first launched Benjamin Talks.
Or
And if I go to
incorporating.
benjamintalks.com, will I find this kind of content I can tap
Yeah.
into
You can
Yeah.
search for any.
and talk about debit cards and Venmo and
So if you go
And phones.
if you go onto our website, we have guides, and if you go down, there's a drop down, and we list all the guides. And if you click on the guide, then there's content that falls under that guide. So
Great.
this would fall under credit and
And we
debit.
actually did a whole debit card series with Go Henry. Because they needed a lot of content, particularly as people are getting debit cards for younger and younger kids.
And Go Henry is a debit card that's targeting children. It started in the UK and it came over to the US. They've actually have built in a bunch of financial literacy content within their app, which we think is great. Again, the more people that have access to financial literacy, the better it is for society. So we're here for that. And I think that's, again, positive momentum that we're seeing across the debit card space.
So I'm a grandparent. I had my 2-year-old granddaughter and her 5-year-old, soon-to-be 6-year-old, a couple of days after your son. This weekend, I want to buy them a Benji Bank. What do I do?
BenjaminTalks.com.
Go to BenjaminTalks.com. How much does it cost me to buy a Benji Bank?
So the standard Benji Bank that's not personalized, which I think we have one back there. Let me bring it up. The front. It sells for $55. And again, $5 goes directly to our charity. The personalized banks, depending on what type of personalization, there are different prices for those.
And then what does my daughter and in-law, son-in-law in that case, get to help them begin the discussion with the kids?
So when you buy the bank or subscribe to our list, so you'll get a guide. And then again, as you want to explore other topics, in addition to the monthly emails we send out, you can also follow us on social media. We do a lot of quick tips for parents there.
Oh, good.
I love those because they're.
What's the one you get the most feedback on? Quick tips that you get the most feedback on?
It's always like allowance, like how to start talking about investing to your children. People tend to care about that. And then it's always, the earning and entrepreneurship. People like seeing kids actually using their physical money as well. So it's really those
two very big ones.
We actually wrote content on insurance and taxes. I will tell you that
one's not as big of a hit.
They're not as big of a hit.
We have it covered all.
We have it.
Foundation, but
they're not our sought after topics.
And what's the thing that has surprised you most on this journey?
I would say, you touched on this a little bit earlier, how rewarding it's been for our own children. Obviously, we wanted to provide content.
Because they're getting a whole inside skinny on business and
Right.
how mom is serious about this and
especially,
this physical stuff that comes out of a warehouse when people come to the site.
Exactly. And we have a patent on our bank. We're patent holders, which we were super proud of. And to hear my daughter say, "Oh, you guys are inventors," has just been a really cool part of this process. That's not something I ever thought I would do.
And do you ever get tired at a dinner with people you just met, having to explain everything you're doing?
That's a little harder because, again, it's a new I wouldn't say it's a new topic. That's not true. It's been around forever. It's not a popular topic.
No.
Money can be very taboo, or it is a taboo topic, which is a lot of times.
Especially when there isn't any.
Right, exactly, which is a lot of times why it's not talked about in the home, or people don't feel educated enough themselves to have the conversation. Those are kind of the two biggest reasons we found, or it's can be a cultural difference in whether money's talked about or not.
So in your kids' schools, is money a topic?
It's at their age, it's built into arithmetic. So they'll learn about coins and bills and how to add money as part of their. Yeah, exactly. They'll speak a little bit about currency and social studies, but there's no.
It's a quick unit.
Budget. Some teachers do set up the classroom economy, so we have seen that. But it's very at the grade school level. It's very teacher specific, and if they want to include it or not.
Your oldest is 8, Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
Any investing conversations there?
So it has started.
I know we all know about Tesla and Disney.
That is not financial advice.
This would be more Nike right now. It has started in terms of interest, and I have a little account friend that we talk about, and we use even just Google for that to show him how a stock is doing. But it's early stages, very early.
But the whole concept that anybody can own a piece
Yes.
of a company he knows very well.
Yes, definitely. That is one of the first things we say. Again, following their lead in terms of interest, so that they want to learn more and ask more questions. But being an owner,
Yeah, I was
up a
funny
lot.
story.
The Disney story.
We were in Disney a little while back, and this is right before we went. I started the theme park. I started the conversation with my oldest Kellen about being a stock owner. What does that mean? So we're walking.
And what's going on with activists?
Yeah, exactly. So we're walking around Disney, and we were actually in Epcot, and Epcot at that point was under some construction, and he wasn't really happy with what they were bringing in. So out of really the blue, he goes, "So Mom, you're telling me if I own one stock in Disney, I could tell them that I want the Luca ride and not the Moana ride?" I go, "Well, I'm glad you're grasping the concept, but it's going to take a lot more than one share." I'm like, it's going to take a lot more than one share, but yes, in theory, you do. Stock owners have a say in certain parts of the business.
Ask Mr. Peltz.
Yeah. So again, does it have to be 100% accurate or the most sophisticated understanding at 8 or 9 or 10? No, but it's just thinking about the concept. That's really important because you want to build on these conversations over time. So they'll have a really strong foundation when they're 18 and 19 and 20. You're not expecting them to get it all right at 8 and 9.
Well, I love what you're doing with Benjamin Talks and with the Benji Banks and the topics you're covering. I would imagine your information is in high demand in social media because young parents now, how do you handle these subjects? Whether you have a lot or you have very little, it's an important subject nonetheless, maybe more important than either of those extremes. But congratulations to you on the business you're building and the business you've built and the work you do. It's doing well by doing good, and that's nice. But let me take you to another subject. Conversation this morning, this guy you may have heard of, his name is James. He was in on a conversation. James is Carissa's husband. And there were 4 guys who were having a conversation, and we were talking about the stress of working at a place like a Goldman Sachs in a trading environment. And there were 2 of us sitting there who said, we've never worked in big companies. Stress for us is you got payroll on Friday and you know you don't have enough to cover it. And you have a truck waiting to get into someplace and they're not letting them in. And if it doesn't get in, you're going to lose the account and you already spent all the money. So we understand stress. And the 2 of us are sitting there saying, how stressful could it be that you're in this beautiful office setting? Air conditioning works. When you want food, they bring you food. And the 2 of us are sitting there saying, yeah, we hear you talking about stress, but we don't get it. That's not real stress. Is it?
Well, actually, we've seen both sides of that at different levels. But I will say one of the most stressful things, and this was not at Goldman, was when our Benji Banks were stuck on a freight, just sitting in a harbor, and we had to have an inventory minimum to sell on a different website, and that was very stressful. So they were like, "Well, what are you going to do? What are you going what can you give us to get the Benji Banks out of the harbor?" And that was a very high stress situation. I think a little more stressful than anything in a trade. Well,
I think it's a different type of stress. I think on the trading floor, I was a trader, right? So I took risk. So pretty instantly if a trade you did is good or bad. And I think it's constantly having to be on. That's really stressful, right? So you're always operating at such a high level. It's really hard to come down from that. I think also the fact that you're risking firm capital is really stressful, right? Especially if you have to consider, P&L targets. Then you're talking about risk and how much risk it's going to impose on the company. I would say that working on the trading floor was the most stressful period of my life. That being said,
having children easy.
In some ways, I will say it made the sleepless nights easier, right? So I think the stress is different. It's different. It doesn't make one more, and this is something that James and I talk about often. He's always like, my job is so much stressful than everyone else's job. And I go, that's not fair, right? First of all, it's true. And it's also subjective. Like your stress tolerance is different from somebody else's stress tolerance. it's just different,
Yeah.
right? It's just different. And it's not fair to say that one stress is more or less
Yeah.
than somebody else.
Whenever we used to, right before we used to allocate, big deal, I always remember this. The head of our desk would always say, it's not open heart surgery. Like, just keep it in perspective.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's stressed and firing, like, very, the emotions are running high and all those things. But
When you're on a trading floor, you're surrounded by all type A people.
Yeah.
So everyone is very vocal and
Nikki,
critical.
I was going to say, just like us sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
You said when you were in trading in equities that there was a lot of jocks on the floor,
Yeah, myself included.
Yeah. Drawn to it, right?
Right. And I think it was really that locker room feel and that intensity, and competitive.
Yeah.
I liked that. That part is probably the thing I like the most.
So there's a
Was the
bit of
environment.
self-selection going on there in terms of where you lean to. And selectivity. Where they're looking for people who've been in those pressure situations, who've been in team activities, who've handled stress.
Right.
More street smart. Like that's what you would say about me.
I mean, if you could work in a pizza place on a Friday in Lent,
Right.
you know what stress
You know
is.
what stress is, exactly.
Um,
And you're this close to people, just like you're on the
Yeah.
training floor.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think the world of trading has shifted a little bit. I think
A lot.
they're attracting a lot less of that. Exactly. So my sister works in the business. She's at a fintech company, and we were just chatting recently, and she said, a big part of her job is entertaining, and she's like, my entertaining looks a lot different. She goes, I've gone out 8 times since November, and my clients just are choosing not to drink, and they don't want to be entertained at a bar. They'd rather go to a workout class or like a sporting event. She goes there. It's very different. It's been a dramatic shift, and she likes it better, right? But I think the world of high finance and what the typical trader or salesperson looks like is different than it was when we were doing it.
Yeah.
Never having worked in Wall Street or been around big businesses other than companies I've been building, I moved into a neighborhood that was a Wall Street community, and I didn't know this guy. They're all in the bond business. They're brokers, they're traders. I had no idea what they did, but I know
if
they.
you want to learn about bonds, we can have a talk later.
All right.
It's a whole separate session.
All I know is those jobs are disappearing,
Yeah, they are.
and a lot of them, they would entertain. And I'm thinking that's work, but I guess if you're doing it 4 or 5 nights a week, it feels an awful lot like work after a while.
Yeah.
So as you say, different kinds of stress. So advice to parents, advice to moms who've interrupted their career to start their families, get their kids into school, and then get to the stage you guys are at. Entrepreneurial, a good idea, less stress if they just take a job someplace. You've done it both.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurial, again, I think it depends on what you're embarking on. Much more of a roller coaster. You have to have more of a risk tolerance. I think there are pluses and minuses. We can say, hey, I have a really busy afternoon with the kids. Let's circle back at 9 p.m. when they're all asleep. We have the flexibility to do that.
Right.
In one sense, that's great. In another sense, that's super tiring. And if we were just going into work and checking a box, or depending on what we were doing at a bigger firm, that looks a lot different.
Point of view I've developed, and it's not just on my own, it's listening to other people. I like Professor Scott Galloway from NYU. He does several different podcasts, and he teaches at the Stern School. He's a marketing professor. But I heard him giving advice recently, and he said, in my day, if the career path to make a lot of money was in your own business or Wall Street. And Wall Street, especially in the New York area, pays disproportionately. So I've seen a bunch of people I'm very fond of who get trapped.
Yeah.
50 years old, and their world goes away, and all they know how to do
Straight bonds.
is arbitrage on bonds in this bandwidth. What are your other skills? What do you do in social media? I really don't do anything in social media. How are your PC skills? I can do a spreadsheet for bonds.
Yeah.
So here they are, 50 years old, been making real money, no capital at risk, stress of different kinds for sure. But now what do they do for the next 20 or 30 years of their productive work life with no skills. It's tough because now you're asking employers if they want a job to take a chance on them. And then they're always saying, I spend a year or two educating this person. How much longer are they going to be working? Or the next bond opportunity comes along, it's going to pay 2 or 3 times what I can.
Right.
And they're gone.
I think that we always joke we wear many hats as being entrepreneurs. I never thought that I was going to be head of logistics, but here I am, head of logistics. So I think when you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're starting something from scratch with a small team, you do get that exposure to many assets of building a business, and you are broadening your skill set.
But I mentioned Professor Galloway. His point of view is there's a new opportunity now for careers that didn't exist 20 years ago. And that is going to work for a big platform tech company. You can make an enormous amount of money, Wall Street-esque or better, no capital at risk, and kind of unstressful work environments. Is that a new career path optionality? Do you think 12 years from now you're encouraging your daughter or your son to think about, well, going to work for a big company isn't a bad thing?
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of benefits to working for a big company. I think particularly when you're first starting out, and I said this to my younger brother who's 9 years younger than me, you can't replace the training. You can't replace the training in a big company. And
You're getting paid to go to school now.
yeah. So, I mean, I would never trade going to a big company first. I don't think I would have been able to, there's obviously exceptions to that if you're inventing something specific or certain tech, but I think going to a big company will never be a bad choice, particularly early in your career.
Because you're learning, you're getting paid really well.
Yeah.
Certainly
You
good
have
on the resume.
benefits.
The benefits are incredible.
The benefits are incredible.
That's not something you're getting at a startup.
No.
It's quite interesting. So James and I recently had this discussion, and he's like, we should just be encouraging our kids to be entrepreneurs. And I said, we should. I go, but it is invaluable, the experience they will get from working at a top firm or company in the space that they're passionate
At a
about.
consulting firm where you get to
Yeah.
learn about all different kinds of
Yeah.
industries.
Mm-hmm.
I go, so while I agree that is a great, thing for us to encourage, that entrepreneurial spirit, the amount of skills that they'll learn from a firm, the network that they'll build. I go, you're forgetting one thing. Like, they're going to have access to a much larger network, right? Like, we know, what it's like from Harvard and working at Goldman. Having access to a network is really important.
Okay, you've had the good fortune of going to a top branded school. And my guess is there's maybe 25 brands in higher education that matter. The rest don't matter, in my opinion. If you have the opportunity to go to a top tier school, how important is that from a career point of view?
I think it opens a lot of doors for you that it wouldn't otherwise. And I think that's particularly, like you said, there's probably 25, maybe less now. I mean, you get to a certain point.
It's the Ivies, it's Stanford, it's University of Chicago,
Right. Exactly.
MIT.
And that's
Yep.
what you're doing business.
Very specific, small list. So outside of that, I think which again will open a lot of doors.
So 8 or 9, 10 years from now, your kids are going to be looking at college. Being here in the Northeast, when my kids were looking at schools, everyone looked to New England. Now I'm hearing kids from the New York area going to University of Alabama. Big popular school in our office here at 1-800 Flowers, University of South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
The big southern land grant schools, these kids have figured out the weather is much better there.
Yeah, it's true.
Is that something you're seeing in your
Yeah, I also
circles?
think it's
We've spoken about this at Benjamin Talks, and personally, I think when you think about what school and college your child wants to go to, it's really important for them to narrow down what they want to do, or if they know for sure.
Or what kind
I
of
want-
experience you
Right,
want for them.
I want to be a phys ed teacher, right? I want to be a phys ed teacher. Great, wonderful. My father was a phys ed teacher.
Oh, they don't want to be in sports management?
Yeah. My point being is,
If you want to be a phys ed teacher, a mathematics teacher in an elementary school, in a high school, well, let's think about what is your projected pay from that?
Yeah.
And what does it cost to go to a Harvard or an MIT? And is going to a Harvard or an MIT going to get you a better teaching job at an elementary level?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not.
Yep.
Now, if you want to go into sports management, or you want to go into investment banking, or you want to be a brain surgeon, your school choice matters more.
Yeah.
Now, I come from the opposite end of the spectrum, right? I went to a non-target, as they like to say in finance.
But that was a tough leap for you to get to Goldman.
It was really tough. And that's why, and I think when I chose Hofstra initially, I thought I was going to law school. So I went in under the idea of, okay, I'll save my money on undergrad and then get into a top tier law school, and use, whatever loans I want to take out for law school. And then what I did is I actually interned the first semester of freshman year at a law firm, and I hated it. I was like, this is not for me. And I switched over to the business school. And at that point, I knew it's like, okay, this is going to be an uphill battle. Like, I need to get work experience now. And I was a freshman in college. And while everyone else was out partying, I was working across from you. And I started building my resume. And I got involved in the Financial Management Association.
But Ivy was a great place to learn.
It was great. And honestly, like, everyone was so hands-on. I learned so much from such a young age. I was 18 years old. At that point, in the early 2000s, freshmen in college weren't really interning, right? You weren't doing that until junior year. And then I got involved in the Financial Management Association at Hofstra, and we would host different speakers, like recent grads, to come and speak. And we had this one recent grad who was president of the Financial Management Association come back and speak. And at the time, I wanted to move groups at Ivy. So I went up to him after and I said, hey, do you mind giving me some resume advice? Like, I really want to move over to the CDO group at Ivy.
Everyone wanted to be in the CDO
group. Yeah.
I want to move over to the CDO group.
Which stands for collateralized debt obligations.
I was in the accounting group.
You must have been fun on a date with James.
Yeah.
James, you should see the CDO I looked at today.
I mean, I taught him a lot of what he knows. I'm just kidding. So
I was like, I was in the accounting group at Ivy as a college freshman and sophomore, and I really wanted to go on the investment side. So I wanted to work on my resume. So this alumni, he's like, okay, let's go through your resume. And when I tell you, we took 2 months of going through my resume and having conversations.
How can it take 2 months? There's nothing there.
Well, this is what he was actually doing.
So I didn't know this at the time. I had no expectations. Like, I didn't go up to him and say, like, hey, get me a job at Goldman. That was not my expectation. That was not how, I don't think you built great relationships that way by going in and asking for something initially. So he was doing my resume and we were having these conversations, and he was basically giving me mock interviews along the way. 2 months pass and he calls me up and he's like, your resume is good to go. And by the way, I submitted it for our summer analyst program for Super Day. And I was like, wait, what? He's like, it's all in your hands now. He's like, I have no say at this point going forward. He's like, you have to interview well. I was like, oh, okay, great. And he's like, I'll help you prepare. He's like, but it's on you. Yeah. And, I say this because Goldman wasn't coming to Hofstra to recruit. We weren't having...
Shocking.
Right. They weren't having super days at Hofstra or meet and greets at Hofstra. And it was really just through my networking, through my resume building on my own, that really allowed me the opportunity to even have the chance to interview there. And then the rest kind of came down on what I did while I was there.
Can I tell a quick story that's a little different than this? But so I think I told you this, but my way of getting my Super Day interview was, I remember finishing practice, it's like a soccer practice, go to the locker room, getting changed.
Yeah, where are you then?
At Harvard. So I'm leaving the athletic facilities and there's, a big kind of reception area. I look in, there's a big sign. It's like, men's undergraduate athletics, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, recruiting day. And I'm like, well, I want to go do that. So there's this whole reception setup. It's all for undergraduate male athletes. And I just walked in. And I introduced myself to a hockey male alum who then became my mentor, who's still my mentor now. I first sat on his desk as an intern. But I just walked in. I was like, well, I don't want to work at Goldman Sachs. I don't want to work on the trading floor. But it was all for, and now there's
That's great.
events for everybody, which is awesome. But yeah, I was like, I'm going to walk through this reception. So
And did you feel the eyes on you?
yeah, oh definitely. And it's like, well, you were invited here. It's like, well, I'm here. So, and I'm staying here.
Which caught the attention.
Which was
So, okay. BenjiTalks.com, Benji Banks, all the content you have, all the things you're doing on social media. 5 years from now, your kids are in high school. What do you think is going to be the big challenge to young parents like you with kids in high school 5 years from now?
I think, you're starting to, Kellen asking for a debit card, that's kind of the first intro. I think
College talk is going to be
college talk,
brewing.
we'll see what it looks like then. That landscape could look
I think also when they eventually get social media, whether we like it or not, they're going to be on social media at some point in high school.
There's no delayed gratification.
There's no delayed gratification, and I think there's also this. Everything is smoke and mirrors, right? So and as adults we know this. There are these influencers that post that they're on a private jet going somewhere, and then you find out that they weren't. That they just have this AI background that shows that they're on a private jet.
Who's the guy that's so popular now? The young guy brings his friends to this tripped out yacht.
Mr.
Mr. Beats.
Mr.
Beats. Yeah. So I think when you
My 10-year-old grandson is in love with him.
yeah.
As well as 10-year-old boys are.
Exactly.
100%. They all at least know who
And I think we have to, as parents, teach our children that not everything you see on social media is real. And in fact, most of it isn't real.
No.
And you aren't supposed to try and keep up with the Joneses. And I think
The irony is you have this platform, which is social, and you think would give people more of an opportunity to feel less lonely. And it's having the opposite impact.
Exactly.
Because everything is glamorized, more perfect than is real.
Mm-hmm.
And people
Filters.
it's amazing. I don't envy you as being young parents right now, and I think it gets tougher as they get into the high school years and maybe through college. And by the way, when your kids are in their 40s, I'm here to tell you it's not any easier.
Great.
On that note, there's wonderful mountaintops along the way, but in between, there's a valley or two. But I do have one hint for you. If you're fortunate enough to be able to, your kids won't mind being seen with you in public, even after they have their own kids, as long as you're paying for dinner or for the vacation.
Yes.
So keep that in mind.
Exactly.
Just a little thing I've learned along the way.
I love it.
Well, Carissa and Nikki, thanks so much for being with us here today,
Thank
sharing all your good information. I'm sure there's a lot of young parents who are going to benefit from hearing what you had to say today and tapping into BenjaminTalks.com to get all the content we couldn't cover today. So thanks for your time and all your great info.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having us.